Hey crafty friends, it's Rick. I'm back with another video for Missing Stamps. Today I'm going to share with you inspiration for the May 2026, this month's free with Purchase Stencil, which is called Classic Florals, which is this one right here. Let me get well, you can probably see it a little bit better. And we're also going to make a card, at least one card, using this. We're going to make a card using the Thank You Stencil, which is this month for May is the Leafy Heart stencil. It's a 4x4. And I also have a suggestion for getting to that $50. The products that I'm using today are going to total up to around $66.22 without tax. And that will get you both of those for free. All right, so we're going to make at least one card with this, and we're going to make at least two cards with this, possibly. All right, so we're going to do this one first because it's going to take a little bit of time to dry. So I've got a scrap piece of paper here we're going to use. And actually, I'm going to take and put a piece of watercolor paper under there. And I'm going to put this on top. This is our Classic Florals stencil. And I'm going to do some ink smooshing on top of my stamp. I'm going to start off, I'm going to use Distressed Oxides. I'm going to start off with my darkest color. My lightest color, I'm sorry. We're just going to smoosh this ink around just a little. And then I'm going to add a little bit of Spice Marmalade to our stencil. We're going to want to cover our stencil, and it's okay if the colors overlap. We're going to add a little bit there. And then I'm going to also add in a little wilted violet. So we're going to add a little bit of this color. I'm going to try to keep the orange and the purple away from each other as best we can. It's okay if a little bit gets on there. We can always add a little separation in between those with our Kitsch Flamingo. And I can clean that off, so I'm not too worried about that. All right, so once you get your stencil inked up, we're going to take a little bit of water and we're going to spritz our stencil. Give it a few sprays. And I'm going to pick this up. And so we can kind of use that as a background if we wanted to. So I'm going to take my stencil, a fresh piece of our watercolor paper. I'm going to take our stencil, I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to press it into place. And then I'm going to take a towel or rag and I'm going to press that on there. We're going to give this ink a little bit of time to set up. Let that ink soak into the paper a little bit. So just press this around and we will lift that up. And there is our stencil background. And it's okay if it gets, because everyone's going to be different. It's okay. We probably could have left that pressed a little bit harder on that side. But I don't want to risk laying it back down and messing it up. So I'm going to set these to the side and let these dry. And I'm going to clean up my stencil and my workstation, and we'll get started on our other card. Okay, we're going to move on to our second card that we're going to work on. And for that, we're going to need a piece of cardstock. I'm going to go ahead and use watercolor paper again, so everything's consistent. I've got my Leafy Heart stencil, and I've got a piece of masking paper. So I'm going to take my stencil and I'm going to tape it to the workstation because I want to put this on the masking paper so we can cut it out. So I've got a light pink ink. We're going to use that. And I'm going to just ink blend over that stencil. Doesn't have to be perfect. I just need a rough estimate where I can cut it out at. And I'm going to be using this color in a little while, so it'll be okay. So there is my mask. I'm going to fussy cut this out. So I will be right back. All right, my friends, I've got my mask cut out. I'm going to take my piece of watercolor cardstock, and you could do whatever cardstock. I like to ink blend on watercolor cardstock because you can get a nice little blend. I'm going to tape this into place with just some low tack tape. And I am going to cut this out. And by the way, the products I'm using the Imagine Dragon stamp and die set, the EIEIO frame die set, the Hand Drawn Hearts stencil, and the Fright Night pearls. And that would get you to the 6622. But we're going to put our Thank You stencil down first. I'm going to ink blend this with gray ink to get a little lighter in a gradient. So I'm going to start off with a light gray color. And I'm going to start off at the bottom and work my way up towards the top. So I'm going to add just ink blending through our stencil like you normally would. And then we're going to go to a slightly darker shade of gray. Let that get lighter as we go up. And then we will darken that to our next shade of gray. And I'm not going to take that up quite as far. And then I'm going to use my darkest shade of gray next. And then if you want to add more shading, you can with alcohol markers. We will see how this works. This turns out. I am going to take a fine liner that is alcohol marker safe. And I'm going to trace around my stencil. So we're just going to trace around this. I'm going to speed this up while I trace around my pattern here. All right, I've got my image traced. I'm going to go ahead and peel this back. So there's that. And I'm going to take and place my mask over our image. So I'm going to peel this back. And I'm going to line this up over our image that we just stenciled. And if it's not, if there's some that I didn't cut right, that's fine. It'll be okay. So there is that. Now I'm going to take a mat and I'm going to place my paper on top. We're going to take our hand-drawn hearts and we're going to layer this on top. This could be any stencil. I'm just going to place that over it. And I'm going to start with a light pink color. And we're going to do an ombre effect of the hearts. So I'm going to start on my right side, just like we did with our stencil underneath. And we're going to let this go to the left. You can do it from top to bottom, right to left to right, whichever way you want to have your background pattern going. There's our light color. We're going to move on to our next shade. And we're going to let this gradually get lighter and blend into that first shade. And I'm going to go slightly darker with our next color and let that blend out. And then we will go to our darkest color. I'm going to come over just a little bit more because I am going to cut this down. Move these out of the way. I can peel this back. There's my ombre heart background. Then we're going to take and lift up our stencil, or our mask, I'm sorry. Remove our mask. No, I think I'm going to leave it alone. I think it's good enough, good with that contrast there. So I'm going to pull in, let's cut this down first. That'd probably be our best idea. So I'm going to pull in my EIEIO frames, and I'm going to cut that down with the stitched die. So I will take some tape, and I can hold that in place. And I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. All right, I ran that through my die cutting machine, so I'm going to pop that out. I could save that for a frame for another card, but we're going to put this die away, and we're going to stamp our sentiment on this layer. And it is from the Imagine Dragons stamp set. I'm going to use for this card, I'm going to use the You Spark Joy in My Heart. So we will take this, and we are going to pop that into our stamp positioning tool. We'll put our sentiment down here below our heart. I'm going to line it up right at the point and that A. And then I will stamp that down using VersaFine Nocturne ink. We probably have to stamp it twice, because we are doing on watercolor paper. Nope, we're good. So I can remove our stamped our background panel, or our little panel. All right, for this card, I've got a piece of black cardstock that I cut out with the next rectangle up from the stitch rectangle. So we're going to layer that together. I'll layer that onto our matte layer. We'll make sure that has a nice even border. And then I will add that to a top folding card base. And we will pop that up with some foam tape. So I'll add a few strips of foam tape behind it. I'll peel these backings off for our second card. And then we'll go back to work on our first card that we started out with. All right, we will add liquid glue on our panel so that we can move this around before we attach it to our card base. So we will add that. Let me stand it up so I can make sure I get that nice and centered. Then I will take a few of our Fright pearls. I'm going to add 3 close to my sentiment and 2 on this side. So we will grab some of our iridescent pearls. We'll add a couple of those. A little small one right there. Add that one right over here. That one down there. And we'll take another medium and add up there. So there is that. Our first card. All right, so there's my panels. We got 2. You can see they're completely different looks. Same technique, really, but we got 2 for 1. So we will take and get that out of the way. We're going to add a little bit of stamping to our card. So I'm just going to take we're going to take one of the sentiments from the set. And let's see, I need to grab a block. All right, I went and grabbed a stamp block. And we're going to take some Tuxedo Black ink. I'm going to ink up my stamp. And I'm going to do some background stamping with our sentiment. Do some on this side. There is that. So we're going to leave that to the side. All right, we're going to leave this one alone. This one's going to stay the way it is. I did go ahead and stamp out and color 2 dragons. The same dragon. I just colored him and stamped him in tuxedo black ink and colored him with Copic markers. I'm going to use the coordinating die and cut these out. So we're going to use them on our card. So we're going to take our little die cutting machine. I will cut both of these out. All right, we're going to take our scallop die from our EIO die set, and I'm going to cut both of these panels out. So I will cut these out, and I will be right back. All right, I've got our panels. I decided to leave this one the way it was. I've got my scallop panel here. I've got some scrap cardstock. I'm going to stamp a sentiment on this for one of our cards. Actually, I'm not. We've got our sentiment over here. So I'm going to stamp Set Your Imagination Free on that panel. Our next sentiment, I'm going to stamp Just a Little Spark of Imagination. So I'm going to stamp that in this bottom corner here. And then I'm going to take my pen in a minute. We're going to add our little dragons to our little panels. And we are going to pop those up with foam adhesive squares. So I will pop a couple behind this dragon. Add a little one behind his head. We'll add a couple behind this little dragon. And then the hard part is going to be picking out which one goes on which card front. We'll peel that backing off. And we pop him down. They still got to have some highlights, but we will do that in shortly. Add him right there. We're going to go ahead and attach these to our card bases. I have 2 more top folding A2 card bases that we're going to add these to. We'll add liquid glue behind this panel. And we will add that to our top folding card base. Make sure we're even. Top and bottom and sides. We'll go ahead and add our other panel. I think I'm going to trim this panel down just a tad. So I will trim this down to 4 by 5 1/4. You know I like a nice white margin. Sure we get this glue everywhere. We'll add that to our card base. So we'll go ahead and add this one to this panel. And I'm not going to add any more foam adhesive to these because they are already popped up. Our little dragons are. So we'll add that one here. There's that one. And this panel we're going to add to our other card. So we're going to add that there. And then we're going to come around with our pen, and I'm going to add a border line. Just it can be wiggly. Doesn't have to be straight. It's probably better if it's not. Go ahead and do a double line. Squiggle around that. That top one right there. We're going to do the same thing to this one. We're going to add a line around our focal area to draw attention to that. That one we're going to leave just a single, and then we're going to add a few of our little pearls. So I'm going to add 3 at the top, 1 here and 1 here, maybe 1 there. We're going to add some of the purple ones. So I'll use 1 there. Teeny tiny one up there. Do that one there. There. I'll have 1 there. And 1 there. So we'll add a couple. For this card, we're just going to add 3 along the bottom. I'm going to use all the same size. So I'm going to start in the center. I will add the other 2. All right, I'm going to add a few little highlights on our little dragon. Just with a gel pen, we're just going to add a couple right along his little backside. There's that. We'll do the same thing on this one. One right there. Maybe a little on his wing. We can clean up anything where we went out of the line. See, I want some on his little horns right there. All right, my friends, so here is a finished look at all 3 cards that we made using the May 2026 Thank You Stencil from Miss Ink Stamps, which is free with any size order. And our 2 cards using the free with Purchase Stencil and our watercolor technique where we got 2 for 1 panels. If you need any of the supplies you've seen used today, I have everything linked and listed in the video description below. Remember, if you pick out $50, you can get the classic floral stencil for free from Miss Ink Stamps this month. And any purchase, you can get the Thank You Stencil, the Leafy Heart stencil for free. If you like this video, you're probably going to like the one coming up right over there. I'll see you in that video. Bye, guys. Stay crafty. Love you.